Dear participants, you are warmly welcome to the topic number 3, which is revenue enhancement strategies. In this topic you will be with Dr. Moxin Mohammed Danga as the main facilitator, who is the lecturer of public financial management at the local government training institute. Also, Engineer Emmanuel Mboso will provide you technical assistance on your learning process. Introduction to revenue enhancement strategies. Dear participants, LGAs have been mandated to collect on-source revenue within their respective area, but do not achieve targeted set for revenue collection from their own source. This is because of the lack of updated and reliable revenue source, ineffective mechanisms for setting revenue target, inadequately conductions of revenue feasibility studies, and because of the lack of strategies in place for increasing their own source revenue. To eradicate these challenges, it needs proper and effective revenue enhancement strategies. Dear participants, after completion of this topic, you will be able to define revenue enhancement strategies, apply functions in the local tax chain, identify processes of formulating revenue enhancement strategies, and you will be able to formulate strategic management tools for boosting LGA on-sourcing revenue. Meanings of revenue enhancement. Dear participants, LGAs has been mandated to collect on-source revenue within their area of jurisdiction. To achieve this goals, it needs proper and effective revenue enhancement strategies. Revenue enhancement strategies refer to the techniques or campaign of improving or advancing revenue through the use of different mechanisms. It is the plan of boosting revenue from the potential revenue existing in the LGAs. The objectives of revenue enhancements strategies is to establish a plan and framework for increasing the level of LGAs on-source revenue. Functions in the local tax chain. Dear participants, for effective LGAs on-source revenue mobilization, local tax chain is inevitable. Local tax chain is a list of activities required to be performed by LGAs for the purpose of enhancing on-source revenue collection. You as stakeholders of on-source revenue mobilization in your LGAs, you are required to ensure that the functions in the local tax chains are well undertaken. Dear participants, there are 7 functions in the local tax chain. Number 1 is tax base identification. tax-based valuation, tax-based assessment, tax-based correction procedure, tax-based by law, taxpayers education and service delivery. Let us start with function number 1, which is tax-based identification. Tax-based identification is a process of identifying taxable item through the evaluation of economic activities undertaken in your council. It is a process of highlighting potential revenue available in your council. There are two main groups. One group is for group falling within the database of taxpayers, which are usually more certain and have clear collecting procedure. These sources are like hotel levy, business license, service levy, land sales, vehicle licenses, and business licenses. The other group is the revenue from miscellaneous sources, such as revenues from produce sales, penalties, and fine. Identification of taxpayers is necessary for making accurate and realistic revenue projection. Tax-based valuation is a second function in the local tax chain. It is the estimation of economic value of taxable activities carried out in your council. Tax-based assessment is a function number 3. It is the act of setting amount of tax that will be charged on the identified taxable item. When assessing the tax, you are advised to set a reasonable amount, and it is advised to set certain percentage of tax instead of fixed amount. Tax-based correction is procedure. Is among of the functions of tax. Is among of the functions in the local tax chains. Is a process of assessing revenue correction mechanism. It including the methods and approaches of collecting on-source revenue. The roles consider the issue of the use of council staffs or agent. LGAs are required to ensure that revenue collectors are using electronic revenue correction device, such as point of sales machine. Tax enforcement is a process of enacting by law governing on-source revenue corrections. You are the main stakeholders of revenue corrections in your LGAs. Your bylaws should state the rate, times of paying taxes, penalty to tax defaulters, procedures of payment and other important issues relating to the collections of on-source revenue. Contrary to the Local Government Finance Act of 1982, which require LGA to develop and update their revenue collections by law, regularly. Majorities of LGAs do not regularly update their bylaw. Taxpayers' education. Taxpayers' education is the provision of information or awareness relating to the on-source revenue corrections. It is the act of highlighting the revenue correction procedure, the importance of collecting on-source revenue. It tries to remove or reduce bad perception. It encourages tax compliances. Service delivery. This is the last function in the local tax chains, whereby it ensuring that your council is providing quality and timely public services. Processes of formulating revenue enhancement strategies. Dear participant, processes of formulating revenue enhancement strategies is the act of selecting causes of action to achieve defined goals. For the purpose of formulating revenue enhancement strategies, you are required to undertake revenue situation analysis. This is because the conduction of revenue situation analysis tend to enable you to know challenges facing LGA's on-source revenue corrections. Dear participants, for the implementation of effective revenue situation analysis, you are required to consider the following 5 major stages. Stage number 1 is undertaking of SOC analysis of the particular LGAs. Step number 2 is set up mission, goals, objectives of where your LGA wanted to be in future. Step number 3 is analyze strategic alternative to achieve revenue goals and objective. Step number 4 is the select the best suitable alternative in line with the SOC analysis identified. Stage number 5 is execute selected alternative to attain the strategic goals and the objective. Together with such 5 steps, you are required to consider some essential factors that can influence on-source revenue corrections, such as political factor, economic factor, social factor, technical factor, legal factors, and environmental factor. In the case of political factors, consider how politicians can influence your revenue corrections effort. Some areas you can set some efforts, but politicians can convince citizens not paying the tax. In the case of economic factors, you are supposed to assess economic trend that affect your revenue collections. And in terms of social factors, consider cultural movement in your area that can affect your on-source revenue. In terms of technical, assess staff and the technology capability related to the revenue correction. And in case of legal issue, examine the impact of law governing on-source revenue. And in the case of environmental issue, consider how climate change can impact your revenue correction. Dear participants, a part of situation is analysis. Also, research and CAG report can be used to formulate LGA revenue enhancement strategies. This is because research and CAG report normally tend to highlight challenges facing LGA's on-source revenue corrections. For examples, for the periods of 5 years covered, the 2016-2017 up to 2021-2022, CAG reports have revealed several challenges hindering LGA's on-source revenue collections, such as narrow tax base, low tax compliance, bad perceptions of the tax system, inadequate institution capacity, and low revenue corrections. Dear participants, for the purpose of this training, the formulation of revenue enhancement strategies will be based on the challenges facing on-source revenue corrections in your LGAs as evidenced in the CAG report. Dear participants, as mentioned above, that LGA's on-source revenue correction faces several challenges such as low tax base, low tax compliances, and low revenue correction. The following are the key strategic issues and the key activities required to be undertaken to enhance revenue corrections in your LGAs. Dear participant, narrow tax base undermine revenue stability. To boost your LGA's on-source revenue, you are needed to broaden the tax base through, number one, the expansion of economic activities undertaken in your LGAs through the use of public-private partnership. Also, you can broaden your tax base by identification of economic undertaking in your LGAs. Also, you can broaden the tax base through reviewing and updating taxable items. Also, in order to broaden your tax base, you can set correction approaches, creation of opinions boxes. The creation of opinions boxes will allow you to receive challenges facing taxpayers when paying taxes. Also, you can broaden your tax base by initiating tax campaign program. Also, you can broaden the tax base by the use of third-party information such as TRA, PCCB, and police to detect unregistered taxpayers. Dear participants, low tax compliance is among of the challenges facing on-source revenue corrections in LGA. To improve performances of on-source revenue, corrections in your LGAs, you are required to strengthen tax compliance by, number one, introduce taxpayer education, establish revenue call center, send messages on compliances and consequences of non-compliance, improve compliance risk management and strategies, introduce and award system for compliant taxpayers, treat taxpayers as a customer by applying customer care skills, strengthening controls of the use of EFDs machine, enforce tax payment, timely detect non-filler and identify inactive taxpayers, design and implement sanction, develop and implement tax bad debts recovery strategies, and establish procedure to monitor executions on incentive regime. Dear participant, currently, perceptions of various stakeholders on the local tax system is negative. To improve perceptions of tax system in your LGAs, you should introduce the following strategies and key activities, such as the development of appeal guide and upload it on your website, establish revenue appeal tribunal, clear the backlog of cases, publish the late to be paid, conduct outreach and communication on tax issue, and publish revenue expenditure report. Dear participant, LGAs faces challenges in revenue collection due to inadequate institution capacity. In order to address these challenges, your LGAs should implement appropriate strategies and key activities, such as updating and enforcing OPLAS, institutionalizing staff exchange program with other organizations such as the TRA, now PCCB, and the police force. Strengthening on-job training, enforcement of the code of conduct of revenue officer, adoption of zero tolerance towards unethical or corrupt practice, sanction staff involved in misconduct, update and publish anti-corruption policies, develop appropriate software for revenue correction, develop and implement tools for revenue analysis, train on the applications of revenue policy, and develop and implement revenue forecasting model. Dear participants, underperformance affects LGA revenue correction. There is a huge difference between budgeted and actual revenue collection among LGAs. To increase on-source revenues on your LGAs, you are required to establish LGA's revenue committee, capacitate LGA's finance committee team, develop and implement revenue policies, hold the quarterly report to review progress, develop clear revenue performance indicator, promote the use of ICT revenue corrections and management, seek and promote political will to enforce revenue corrections or ensure active political leadership. Monitor and evaluate revenue correction system, issue of receipts for the money received, bank or deposit into bank accounts immediately after the corrections of money from taxpayer, provide clear guidelines for utilizations of revenue at the collection centers, and conduct regular bank reconciliation. Conclusion. Dear participant, In this topic, you learn the revenue enhancement strategies at LGA. To conclude, the main objective of this topic was to enable you to establish strategies and the key activities to improve on-source revenue mobilization in your LGAs. Dear participant, thank you very much for your listening.